Start coughing.
Here we go. Started.
Thank you, sorry. Alright, today we're going to be talking, the title that I give this message is Oppressed by Atmosphere, Dealing with Passive Aggression. So, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to pray real quick for us, and we'll get started. Heavenly Father, we just set our hearts and our minds upon you. We cry out for the mercy, for the power of your Son Jesus to be upon us, to open our eyes and our hearts and our minds to receive your truth, God. Lord, I pray that you would shine a light on our lives, everything up to this moment, and even looking forward into the future so that this message could find a place to apply in each of our individual situations. God, that you would illuminate the enemy's trap, and that you would also illuminate the way of escape that you've afforded for us. Lord, we know none of this would be possible without Jesus. We know that we are insufficient in ourselves to overcome such things, but we know with your help, there is nothing that can hold us back. Lord, I thank you for what you've taught me this week, and Lord, I just pray that you would anoint me, that you would put your words into my mouth, God, that it would come forth from you through me, that I would be able to get out of the way and not distort this, that the seed would fall on good soil, that we would have a heart to obey. I would pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I chose the title for this, Oppressed by Atmosphere, Dark Atmosphere, because I think when we talk about passive aggression a lot of the time, it's taken pretty lightly, you know. We talk about, oh, this dude was a little passive aggressive, or, you know, we talk about these ideas, but we don't necessarily, just realized I'm not mic'd for that. But we don't really, I think, recognize the full weight of what that is. For one thing, I can look back at my life and different seasons. I'm sure a lot of people could relate, whether it was at home or at work or in a relationship, where passive aggression seemed to happen a lot. Whether it was you doing it, or whether it was a wife or a parent or a boss or a coworker or whatever, you lived in a situation where you spent a lot of time there. And in my experience, there's three really heavy things about being in the midst of passive aggressiveness. And the first is, I think a lot of times, like, this isn't the first thing people would think of, but I think a lot of times it's full-on spiritual warfare. I think a lot of times the enemy provokes people into getting into a passive aggressive state. And once they're in it, it's like he just rides that atmosphere in. And so there'll be spiritual oppression mixed right in with the passive aggressive just emotion in the air, you know? And so it's a lot heavier than just like, oh, it's uncomfortable. It also just has this spirit crushing thing. And that's because, like, in passive aggressiveness, there's a little bit of complicity. We're tiptoeing around somebody. And so if the devil's at work in the midst of that, we're tiptoeing around him. We're submitting to him, and we're submitting to this other person's tantrum. And so it can be really heavy. A spiritual weight can just fill a room because of that. The second thing is, I think, if we really look honestly at situations where we're in a passive-aggressive atmosphere for a while, it's a lot of emotional manipulation going on there. There's a lot of tiptoeing, walking on eggshells, and people use it to manipulate other people eventually. They throw it out enough that people are going to really be careful and go out of their way, and that's really a negative thing for relationships in general. You throw out passive aggression a lot, people are not going to want to hang out with you. You're too much trouble. They don't want to have to be, connected to an emotional terrorist who's grinding them down all the time. They don't want that. And being around that's not great either. The third thing that really hit me was I think it really does build up to what I would even define as an abusive environment, in that it's just very unhealthy. It breaks people down. I think if you were a kid and you were raised around that, where there's just simmering in the air all the time, and people were just being nasty without ever talking about what was really wrong, it has a very negative effect on people. And I think because part of the problem is if you're being passive aggressive, right, you're not telling the person what you're upset about. So especially for a little kid, you have to guess what they're angry about. And guess what? You're not going to make the right guess. Most of the time it's going to be because I suck or because I'm terrible. You know, whatever your injury is, it's just going to feed that injury. So in a lot of ways, I don't think people really recognize how big of a deal it is to have this pattern. And I hope we're going to talk about how to overcome it, but before we even get there, just talk about how negative it really is. Like, it's worse. Like, it's better to just get in an argument. It's better to yell at each other to some extent. Like, I'm not saying the full ugliness of cursing each other out or whatever, but to some degree, like, just straight aggression is so much better than passive aggression when we really look at what it does. But before we get there, I just want to say this message is for people that do it, because I think we all do it. We all have passive aggressive moments. And it's also for people who are around people that are passive aggressive a lot, because somebody's got to put a kibosh on it. If you don't want it in your life, you got to make the decision it's not going to be in your life anymore. And we're going to be talking about it. You don't have to put up with it. It doesn't have to be in your life. You can get rid of it pretty easily. I'm not saying you're never going to bump into it, but you don't have to put up with it once you do. You can cut that stuff off. Before we get into how to overcome it, I just wanted to talk about what it is. I don't think that it's really a great name. We're going to use that name, passive aggressive, because that's what everybody knows it by. I'm not going to try to change the name here. But it's not a really good description, because it's not really that passive. You know, it's not. It's just a badly put together name. What I would name it, and again, I'm not going to change the name, but I'll just throw this out to help us define it. But I would name it, if I was back then when they were first deciding to name this thing, I would have named it something like non-verbal aggression. Because really what you're doing in passive aggression is like, I'm going to be aggressive to you, I'm just not going to speak out loud about why. I'm going to keep it on a non-verbal, body language, emotional fuming, filling the air with my attitude. I'm going to keep it on that level. It's going to be slamming cabinet doors and cursing under my breath. It's going to be on a subliminal level. Everyone's going to be aware that I'm angry, but I'm not actually going to verbally say that I'm angry or why I'm angry or what's going on. I think, and then when I really thought about it, I thought it's also a form of punishment. It's a form of punishment where I'm going to decide to punish people and not tell them why I'm punishing them. Like, it's on you to figure out why I'm angry and why I'm giving you the silent treatment. You ever think about like a silent treatment? You know, it's like, I'm not going to tell you what I'm upset about. You got to guess, or you, whatever it is. And it's like, it's really nonsensical. But I think part of the reason that we do it is maybe we don't feel that secure in why we're angry. Maybe we're not even honestly angry about this. We're just angry about something else. And I think if you do passive aggression a lot, it just becomes the way that you vent and you deal. It's a stress relieving thing that maybe you do. And maybe you don't think about it that way, but you nitpick. You wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and then, you know, your wife spills coffee or something, and you get passive aggressive, and you think it's about that thing. That's what you tell yourself. She's such a klutz, and you go off on that. But it's really not about that. And if you talked about it out loud, you would probably realize that it wasn't and feel stupid. So instead, you just jump to the punishment phase, but it's not an audited judgment. Nobody else gets to look at why you decided this punishment. You're just like, no, I'm going to punish this person. I'm going to be nasty to them. I'm going to make it the whole room uncomfortable for a while to punish them. talk about why. To be passive aggressive, all you really need to do is express your aggression without talking about why. That's passive aggression. That's all that you need to do. You get aggressive, you emote that punishment into the room, you start sighing, like you're irritated, and then you're like banging, slamming doors. People ask you about like, oh, do you need this? No, I don't need that. No, thank you. You know, and it's just like, what you're saying isn't lining up with the way that you're saying or the way that you're acting. You're saying things that would make it sound like, no, I don't have a problem. I'm fine. Just fine. I'm freaking dandy over here. But it's clear that it's not true. You're emoting, you're punishing, you're pushing on that person because you have a grievance, but you have chosen not to express what your grievance is. I'm not going to tell you why I'm upset. I'm not going to even admit that I am upset, but clearly I want you to know I'm upset. I just don't want to talk about it. And it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing to be like, I want this person to feel my anger, but I don't want you to talk to me about my anger, and I don't want to have anything I don't have to express it. I don't have to tell you what I'm angry about. I just want to punish without the conversation. And really, we really look at it, we can trace that right back to a little kid throwing a tantrum. It's the same energy. It's the same emotional thing. I'm gonna react. I'm gonna make people feel my displeasure, but I'm not even figuring it out myself. Let alone I'm not gonna tell anybody the why. I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do. What I want to hit us on today that I haven't thought a lot about until this week is that passive aggression is a consent-based thing. It's like a social contract. It would not work unless everybody was in on it. Like, think about it. I'll challenge you. At some point, I was going to say this anyways, but it's funnier now because of how often everybody's had the need to go to the bathroom. But at some point, you're probably going to get up from this sermon and go to the bathroom. And when you do, I want you to take a minute while you're in the bathroom and try to be passive-aggressive by yourself. Just try to be passive-aggressive in that bathroom with nobody. It doesn't work. You need somebody to be passive-aggressive too. Yeah. And more to the point, you can't just be passive-aggressive to anybody. You have to be passive-aggressive to somebody that, number one, is going to understand that you're being aggressive. You can't be passive-aggressive to somebody who's too dumb to understand that you're upset. They're just going to take, like someone with zero social intelligence, no emotional intelligence, and they go, are you okay? You're like, yeah, I'm fine. You go, oh, good, that's great. It doesn't work. You can't do it unless the person, number one, understands that you're pissed at them, right? Yeah. And number two, they have to not bring it out into the open. They have to feel some sort of constriction about actually bringing it up. Yeah. Even though you're being aggressive to them, they're like, well, he's being aggressive. But they don't want to say it out loud. Yeah. Like everybody in the room kind of side-eyeing each other. But nobody says it. And that's why it can exist. It needs that. It doesn't work. It just becomes normal aggression. You go, why the hell are you doing that? Like, it just blows up, right? It sets it off. And there has to be this level of like, I don't really want to get in an argument. I don't want to get in a fight. But he's being fighty with me. It's uncomfortable. And so you're trying to work it out without talking about it, which is not very effective, right? But that's what you do. He's trying to be aggressive. You're either pushing back and you're trying to be aggressive back without actually getting into a fight. You're like, oh, you're slamming doors. Well, I'm slamming doors now. And we're in a fight where we're not talking about we're in a fight. I'm fine. Yeah, I'll fight too. I'm so great, and you're just, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But you're in a passive aggressive war. It's like two thunderclouds are coming into the room, and your poor kids are like, woo! What's going on? Yep. Let me speak from my childhood. That can happen. You live under a constant storm front situation. People coming home from work just nobody's saying it. It's terrible. It is. It's bad. It's not a healthy environment. It's not.
It is.
But it's all like it's either that, or you could have a situation where here's a passive aggressive person. Like there's two ways that passive aggressive people can thrive. One is in a relationship with another passive aggressive person, and they're just all the time. The other is with a person who's passive submissive, where they just feel bad about themselves all the time. Anyways, and the passive aggressive person kind of comes like it's like in a relationship. You have two kinds of physical abusive relationship, right? One is where the couple fight. Like the girl hits back and they're just like, and they're like throwing stuff at each other and screaming. And the other is where the guy goes home and he beats the woman and she's just trying to like placate him the whole time, right? Mm. That's the two options. If you do something different than that, you're not going to be in that relationship, right? If you never get physical, then it's not going to ever happen. Or if you're like, no, we don't do this, I'm out. You shut it down in some way. The only way you have it long going is you're passive submissive or you're passive aggressive. Yeah. And the same thing, that's the same thing we're talking about with passive aggression. You have, and this is why I'm pointing out it's a consent state, it's partially your fault that it's going on. It doesn't matter if it's the other person who's storming into the room with passive aggression all the time. They couldn't do it without your help. Mm. They wouldn't be able to maintain it for more than 30 seconds if you wouldn't put up with it. It really is a thing where you're in a relationship and you found this weird music that you're dancing to that is passive aggressiveness and you're allowing it. So sometimes it'll be like, oh, I don't start it, but when they're being passive aggressive, then I get passive aggressive and we're just and then eventually what happens is after like an hour, then it turns into an argument. But you might be in a marriage or a friendship where it's like, well, we have a problem. We don't talk about the problem until we've been passive aggressive at each other for a day and a half. And then we get finally it comes out, oh, I'm pissed because you didn't do the dishes on Wednesday. And by then, guess what? Nobody cares about your grievance anymore. Yeah. What they care about is we've been like hating on each other for 3 days now. And nobody's listening and nobody cares because the trauma of the actual passive aggression is worse than whatever started it. It's really a dumb way to do it. It would have been better to just, before you picked on that person, you just go, hey, that bothers me. There'd at least be a chance for them to go, oh, my bad, and fix it. But if you're like a jerk to them for an hour first, and then you try to bring it up, like, and I think this happens a lot. It's kind of a stereotypical thing, right? For maybe the wife to be upset because the husband didn't do the dishes, and so she puts on an attitude. She doesn't tell him. She's just like, and she's just kind of irritated at him for an hour. And then finally he goes, what's wrong? What's wrong? You didn't do the dishes. And at that point he's like, I don't freaking care, man. You just disrespected me for an hour. The dishes, who gives a crap? Break every dish right now. You know, and it's like, forget about it. You had a chance, there's a window to work it out, and you just blew it. And that's part of the reason why passive aggressiveness is so dumb and so unhelpful, is because eventually it gets you to the aggression. Eventually, maybe you have the conflict that you need to have, but it makes sure that conflict's never going to be anything good. And there are marriages, there are relationships where that's where they live. We don't do anything without being passive aggressive jerks to each other for a couple hours first, and it just guarantees that it's not going to work. Yeah. It just guarantees that it isn't. It hurts everybody. It hurts everybody in the situation. Even people that aren't, like, you could feel like you could just be over at somebody's house. You ever been to a party at somebody else's house and the husband and the wife start, and they start getting passive aggressive with each other? And they're so focused on each other, they don't realize they're smoking this whole room out with the passive. Everyone's like, well, I gotta get going. You know, it's like, I gotta get out of here. It's uncomfortable. It's nasty. It's not good. What I want to hit us on, and again, I'm probably milking this more than I need to. You guys probably already get it. But I just want to hit it on this level, because the thing about passive aggression is this. You do it because you believe that your grievance justifies the behavior. Yeah. Because you're like, this person really hurt me. I'll give you an example. Like, you wake up in the morning. This happened a while back. You wake up in the morning and you get up and your wife has made a delicious breakfast for your kids, and then you're like, man, that smells good. And you get there and it's like, oh, I didn't make any for you. Oops. And you get a little, you just woke up, coffee isn't even, well, I made my coffee. I know you don't like this kind of coffee, but I wanted to make it. So like, well, I guess I'll make my own coffee. And, and then maybe you're irritated about something else, maybe not, but all of a sudden you have this choice. What are you going to do? You'd be like, what the hell? Why isn't, you could attack the person, but that seems like a little much. You could let it go, it's not a big deal, but you're feeling grumpy. And so you decide this little middle ground of being, I'm just going to kind of be a jerk to everybody for a while because I didn't get breakfast. That's what we tend to do. Now, what I want to throw out as like an idea, and I want to put this out like a statement. I want to make a statement, and I'm going to say, try to prove me wrong on this. Think about it and try to prove me wrong, because I think if you can accept that this is true, maybe it'll change your mind about being passive aggressive, because you feel like, yeah, man, that wasn't fair, man. What, they're gonna make breakfast for everybody? You fed everybody, and no, not me. What, you think I was waking up too late? Is that some sort of commentary on me waking up too late? I was up doing ministry last night. Why is that, and you're doing this whole thing in your head, but you don't talk to anybody. And then you be passive aggressive, and you feel justified to be passive aggressive. But what if I go into the situation, what if I go into your mind right now and say, wait a minute, maybe you do have a grievance. Maybe it needs to be dealt with. Maybe justice is necessary in this situation. But passive aggressive is not the right way to do it. Just because you're right, just because you have a genuine grievance, just because something needs to be taken care of, does not all of a sudden make passive aggressiveness the right way to do it. So I'm going to throw this at you just to kind of arm you on that place. So next time, my grievance is real, to think this, okay? Passive aggressive, and try to prove me wrong. I want you to push back in your minds and realize what I'm saying is true, because it's going to help you kind of be disgusted with passive aggressiveness. Passive aggressiveness is stupid, it's ugly, it's unattractive when you're passive aggressive, it's cowardly, and it's immature. I want you to think about that. I want you to try to push back against it. Number one, it's stupid. You don't think it's stupid? How much sense does it really make to handle your problem that way? You're going to get angry at a person and not tell them why you're angry. Because why? Because that's going to change them somehow? They're going to figure it out? If they figure it out, by the time they figure it out, they're going to be so angry at you, they're not going to want to change anything. It would make a lot of sense to say something, but to just be a jerk to somebody, again, by the time, there's times where you're being passive aggressive and you're literally thinking she doesn't know, or he doesn't know, but I'm going to keep pushing until they finally, you better figure it out, you better guess, It's how much sense does that really make? It's not a good way to fix something. It's not intelligent. It's not this is the best way to probably get this person to change their inappropriate behavior. No, it's not. It's probably the worst way to do it. So it's stupid, right? It's a stupid way of handling it. What's it going to do? Is it going to get you revenge? It's going to get you revenge? No. That person's going to blow up on you. You're going to get more abuse coming your way. What would you do if somebody attacked you for no reason that you could see? Somebody just came up and tackled you and started hitting you. What would you do? Would you just say, well, maybe I broke a rule and didn't realize it? Maybe I am walking on top of their grandparents' grave. And I just peed on the I thought it was a boulder, but it's a tombstone for a national hero. You're not going to jump to that. May be what happened, but you're not going to jump to that conclusion. They have to say, what are you? They got to tell you. Otherwise, if somebody jumps you and they give you no reason why, you're going to protect yourself. You're going to go into fight mode. You attack somebody without telling them why you're upset. You're angry. You start slamming cabinets. You're going to be like, what the heck is this person's problem? And you're going to start layering up the shields. By the time they tell you what's wrong, you're not going to be able to hear them anymore. You don't care. You're too shielded. You're just thinking about how that's being used as a weapon against you. You're not thinking about how you may have hurt them. And do I really want to hurt this person? No, I don't. You know? By the time that you've ground your husband through the grinder for 3 days and he finally guesses that's because you didn't do the dishes, he's so shielded up. He's like, this is about dishes. You would do this to me about dishes? You would disrespect me like this about dishes? And she's been thinking the whole time, you would disrespect me by dishes? Like, it gets to a nasty place. And it's like, but at the first moment, you're like, I've only been doing a lot. Can you help me with the dishes? Half the time, the guy would be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about it. And so it gets built up in everybody's mind to a huge thing when it could have been nothing. We didn't even need to have an argument about this if we had left the emotion out and just said something from the get-go. It's stupid, right? It is stupid. And it's ugly. I want you to think, I don't have a great argument for this. Maybe this is a great argument. I think it's sufficient to just say this. Tell me about a time when someone was passive-aggressive and they looked good. Just tell me one time you were in a situation where someone's passive-aggressive and you go, wow. That guy, man, look at him, taking care of business, you know? Like, there are times you see a guy get in a fight, somebody talks back to him and snap, don't you talk to me like that. And you go, yeah, bro, stand up. Like, there are times, like, even when people are being aggressive, we go, I respect that. You know, let somebody push him around. Yeah. Or he was witty, you'll never, I guarantee you, think of it, you'll never find a time where it's like, yeah, he threw an attitude, he threw a little tantrum, and he slammed all the cabinet doors because his wife talked back. Like, no, it's not a good look, bro. Like, no matter how grieved you are, believe me, by doing that, you just make yourself look stupid and unattractive and pathetic. Like, it's not a good look. And that might not seem like a great reason, but you'd be surprised how much it can motivate you if you really realize how stupid you look when you do something. I just look like a little kid throwing a tantrum right now. Like, people don't. They don't think about it. That's why you can be at the party or go out to dinner and a couple get in a fight at the restaurant. Everyone's just like, how did they not know how bad they look? Everybody's going to get in their cars and be like, geez, what was that about? Like, it's not a good look for anybody, right? Yeah. And sometimes it'll be crazy. Like in a marriage, it'll be a woman, she's complaining that her husband doesn't compliment her enough or something, so she's passive aggressive. It's like, really? That's another level of stupid, isn't it? Because, like, you want him to notice that you're more attractive, so you're going to make yourself really unattractive. It doesn't make sense. Or the man wants more respect. So the way you want more respect is by not manning up and talking about it. You're just going to be a little boy slamming cabinets and doors. Oh! You don't even have the balls to talk to her. Yeah. And that's what's going to make her realize that you're a man. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not attractive. It's cowardly. I want to hit this point. If you had even a little bit more courage at any point in your life when you were passive aggressive, you wouldn't have done it. You know what the greatest courage is in that situation? Just go pray about it. It takes more courage. I guarantee you it takes more courage to go to God and say, I feel offended. I think I've been wronged, but maybe I'm wrong about it. You tell me whether whether I'm in the wrong, whether they're in the wrong. To be brave enough to face the situation before God and say, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. That takes way more courage than it does throw a little tantrum and stomp around the house. Yeah. That's easy, man. You're not even going to tell the other person what's wrong. They could have said something. They could have defended themselves. So you're gonna perfectly protect yourself by being passive aggressive. So they can't even point out the holes in your idea, let alone come before the all-knowing God who knows your heart inside and out. That's courage. That's one level. A little bit less. Well, just to be aggressive, man. And more respect for the guy who just yells, bro. They're just like, what the heck, you know? Like, at least he's saying it out loud, man. At least he's ready for a fight. To jump right over, I'm not even going to discuss this with you. I'm just going to punish you. My little weenie passive-aggressive way. I'm just going to That is cowardly. I don't have enough guts to argue with you, and I don't have enough guts. You know what it takes? You know what it is? It takes the most courage to go and talk to God. On top of that, it takes even more courage for God to say, you need to let that go. They did sin against you. So what? Let it go. I forgave you. Forgive them. Walk on. It's not a big enough issue. It's a 1 John situation. That is not a sin that leads to death. Pray for that person and walk on. Let it go. That's courage. And if it's not, if it is a situation where there's death here, it's hurting the relationship, they're in danger of something, you know, where it's like, yeah, God's saying you need to say something, you need to draw a boundary, you need to set something in this to keep it from souring, and you go up and you have that conversation, and you don't flip out. It isn't just blah, emotion. You come calm in the spirit and say, listen, this isn't working for me. And you talk it out. That's courage. All those things take courage. The cheapest, most cowardly thing you can do in that situation is be like, well, I'm afraid to talk about it. I'm afraid to figure out whether I'm right or wrong. And I'm afraid to not do anything because I don't want them to keep walking all over me. So I'm just going to like growl under my breath. And this is what I'm going to do. How pathetic. How cowardly. This isn't the men we're called to be. That's not right. I think you put those three together and you can already say, yeah, of course that's a sign of immaturity. You can just feel it on passive aggressiveness. It's a sign. You never see someone and be like, this guy's super mature. You never think that in the middle of someone being passive aggressive, like, this guy has got it together, man. He's so in control of himself. He is so mature that he's being passive aggressive in the middle of this board meeting. Like, you don't think that.
Yeah.
When you see a person that's never passive aggressive, they either let it go or they deal with it calmly. You go, that guy's mature. Like, the absence of it is a sign of maturity. So, I think I've made my point. It's bad. It's bad. Let's not do it. Let's get rid of it. Now, it's actually really simple if you think about it. How do we get rid of passive aggression? We need to push it one way or the other. That's all we have to do. It has to be perfectly balanced. You have to sit there and take the aggression non-verbally and not pop that bubble. You have to let that guy balance right there. He's being pissed, but he's not saying anything about it. You have to be careful around him to let him keep his balance and be passive aggressive. All you have to do to screw that up is push him one way or the other. You want to be passive? Let it go. You want to be aggressive? Speak up. But we're not going to balance right in between. We're going to bring it to a resolution. It's that simple. If you really think about it that way, it's just that you have to balance on this edge of a knife. You have to. We're going to talk about what to do when someone's being passive aggressive to you first. But then we're going to talk about if you're being passive aggressive. But if you're talking about somebody else is being passive aggressive, we're balancing on the edge of a knife. You're trying to be aggressive, but not out loud. They want you to know, but they don't want it to become an actual discussion or an actual argument. They just want to punish you with the emotional vapor of it. All you have to do is push it one way or the other. I think a great way to think about it is that people have a right. Like I would say it this way, people have a right to go deal with a problem on their own. They have a right. You have a right, if I offended you, you have a right to go deal with that on your own. To take a moment in your privacy and deal with that and get over it. You deserve a little buffer. You deserve a moment to get a hold of yourself and fix it. Nobody like Jesus, but outside of Jesus, I don't think Paul, I don't think any, they needed a minute. Somebody did something and they were just, I can't believe that guy did that, you know? There's a moment of shock. You're trying to figure it out. You need a moment. That's perfectly reasonable. If somebody thinks that I've offended them, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, maybe they have a real grievance, maybe they don't. They have every right in the world to need a moment to work it out. I don't have a right to barge in. What's wrong? I don't have a right to do that for like 5 minutes. They deserve a little moment. Somebody has an attitude, they deserve a little bit of a minute to figure it out themselves before I can push my way in. Now, if they're in an attitude and they just stay in one for a prolonged period of time, then am I going to submit to this? Am I going to consent to this passive aggression? But they have a moment. They don't have to immediately get aggressive the second that they get injured. They don't have to immediately voice a grievance and go off half-cocked. They can take a minute to think about it. Hopefully, they're not acting on it or emoting on it. They're thinking about it. They also have a right, if they believe they've been grieved, to talk to me about it. And say, what the heck, bro? Why did you do that? People have a right. You're in a relationship with somebody. They're your friend. You're married to them. Whatever. You have a right. Any relationship, you're going to need to be able to bring up grievances and say, this isn't working. Something's off here. This needs to be moved. This boundary needs to be set. There needs to be consequence for this. I need an apology. Those are natural things that we need in a relationship. Those are both okay. The problem with passive aggression is it's neither of those. It's just like, I'm going to punish you without talking to you about why. That is inappropriate. Nobody really has the right. They feel like they do because they have a grievance. And you probably think they maybe have a right because you do that sometimes when you're being passive aggressive. But if you can hold it in your mind, nobody actually has a right. Just act like a jerk to people for a prolonged period of time for a secret grievance that they won't tell anyone what it is. That is not actually okay. And if you look at it that way, then it's just a simple matter. You either need to get rid of it, take care of it. Like either this is a private thing and you've had 5 minutes, why aren't you over it? Like you deal with it. If it's a small thing and it's you. You have a problem. You're too easily offended. You got offended and it's not really something worth fighting about. You need to let that go. Or you need to speak up and we need to fix the problem like adults. It's got to be one or the other. You either let it go or we're going to talk about it. But we can't be in this floating in the fog of you're going to be angry and emoting and not talking about it. That's juvenile. We're not going to do that. And you can do that. You can put people in that position to say, look, we don't do that. And if it's been a long time, you've been in a relationship and this person throws their weight around passive aggressively sometimes, it's going to be a little shock to the system when you shut it down. And it's going to take some time, it's going to take some effort, it's going to take an investment on your part to break that cycle in a relationship. Just like, sorry man, I'm not going to let you do it. We're either going to argue or you're going to let it go, but we're not doing this anymore because this just takes forever and it never leads anyplace good. Eventually it leads to a relationship, or eventually it leads to an argument that does not have a good resolution because of all the crap that went in front of it. Or it just, what happens is you're just constantly negative. You have this constant passive aggressiveness and all of a sudden it just becomes the normal background in your relationship. You ever seen a marriage like that? You're like, these people hate each other. No, they don't. What happened is they started doing the passive aggressive thing and it became so normal, so common to spend so much time there that it's just defaulted. They just live in that crap atmosphere all the time. And one blames the other for it. But really, they couldn't do it without each other. They've gotten together. In some ways, they're actually operating quite effectively as a couple together. It's just they have a really terrible goal. They could use that for something good. They could use that kind of consent and connection and agreement. But instead, I came out of this traumatic past, you came out of this traumatic past, and our wounds lined up in such a way that we created this monster. And we're just going to keep it going. The truth is, and this is the best way to think of, I know that's not really passivity, that's not good. Aggression, that's not good either. I'm not saying that you should be passive, because passive just means I'm holding it in. And it's rotting my guts out and I'm full of bitterness, but I'm trying to make my face a plastic mask so no one can see it. That's not good. And neither is aggression, which is just screaming at somebody because they hurt you and trying to hurt them back. But I'm going to say this. Either one of those options is better than passive aggression. Like if you if you don't have the emotional intelligence in this relationship if you have to choose between those three, being passive, being aggressive, or being passive aggressive, take any option except passive aggressive. It'll be better for your relationship. You'll get the emotional IQ over time if you stick with it and you just have the arguments you need to have and you work it out. That's the way to do it. So I'm just going to give a couple of steps and talk this through. Obviously, relationships are a moving dynamic, but this will give you an idea of how you shut this stuff down. Excuse me. So number one, if there's another person, pick your scenario in your mind. There's another person that's being passive aggressive to you. The first thing I would tell you to do, the second you realize someone's being passive aggressive to you, number one, pray. And I'm going to say a very specific type of prayer. Do warfare prayer. Passive aggression isn't always caused by the demonic realm and spiritual stuff, but you would be shocked how often it is. Devil's not an idiot. He realizes this is a great way to ruin a relationship. If I can get people to believe that the best way to handle their irritation and their problems is just being passive aggressive at each other, I can ruin that relationship. I can build so much bitterness, and I can have people just walking around armored against each other all the time because there's this constant atmosphere getting thrown back and forth, and I can get them to live so separate in their hearts from each other. I can just kill this relationship. I could kill this business. I could kill this marriage. I could kill this father-son or mother-daughter, whatever relationship. I could kill it this way. He's not an idiot. He knows what he's doing, and he will assign spirits just to play that. And again, a lot of times what happens is something will just come up. A spirit will just come up and oppress somebody first thing in the morning. Just press on them and see if it can get away with it. And if they're not spiritually aware, if they just accept negative feelings, oppression, their heart just being crushed, they just wake up feeling, I'm just a terrible person. Where did that thought come from? And it's just there. Boom, it just presses on them. And they don't ever fight back. They accept it. The devil can get away with it. And then what is that demon going to do? He might say this. He might say, it's all her fault. Might grab onto something. You see what she did right there? That was kind of rude. And push you. What? Not to a fight, not to that. No, that'll get resolved. Push you into passive aggression. Because now you're just spreading that darkness over your house. And when people submit to that, they don't push back. That's how the enemy works. That spirit, that oppression has a spiritual edge now. There are times you've walked into homes. I'm sure you've walked into homes and been like, ugh, they're just at each other. This is such a gross environment. You can feel it spiritually. That's why. The first thing you do when passive aggression is going on is you drop into the spirit and you oppose the enemy. When in doubt, cast it out. That's what I say. You can deal with everything else later, but if there's a spiritual element there, you need to say, if there's a demon involved in this, get out in Jesus' name and you push it out. Why? Because number one, that's the top level of the battle. If you ignore it, it'll come over the top of your head. For your own self-defense, you need to deal with it. Secondly, you can't help that person until you get that out of the way. There's sabotage. If it's a spiritual oppression, you can't reason that person out of that. They have such a crushing weight on them. Jesus didn't give counseling sessions to demoniacs. He cast them out. Then there might have been a counseling session, but under that kind of oppressive weight, under that pain, under that self-hatred, whatever that thing's doing, it's feeding the rage that feeds the passive aggression. You've got to put that out first. Doesn't take long. It's a 2-second thing. But it needs to be the first thing you think of in passive aggression. I'm kicking that out. I'm not going to let this just rock. And it's not taking over this room. It's not hovering over me and my kids. It's not happening. Number one, pray. Warfare. Number two, also pray. This time for protection. Your own protection. there are few things that are harder for us not to get stirred up by than accusation. If somebody is coming against you and you don't even know why, it's a powerful temptation. You're either the kind of person who's going to get angry about it and you're going to be tempted to be passive aggressive, or you're the kind of person who flogs themselves and you're like, yeah, that's probably wrong. I don't know what I did. It was probably this, it was probably that. Whatever, it's usually a combination of the two, but you're only conscious of one. You're only aware of one. You're passive submissive, but you're really bitter towards that person, but you're not aware of the bitterness that's dripping out of you. You're just flogging yourself. Or you're super passive aggressive. When someone's passive aggressive against you, where is it coming from? Because you feel like, oh, they're rejecting me, I deserve it, and that's what feeds the, screw this, man, I can't live under this, and you snap. You have to pray for your own protection in that situation. You have to have the humility to say, I can't walk through. Maybe it's 10 minutes for you, maybe it's 20, maybe it's an hour. You got a point where you're going to lose it. Where you are going to shift into anger in response to someone being angry with you. You're a human being. It will happen. You might be able to hold your breath and contain that pressure. Remember, try to be passive aggressive in that bathroom by yourself. I'm blessed with a congregation of small bladdered sheep. So now I can make it through the whole sermon, not have to go, oh, I gotta go, guys, but too much coffee. But anyways, what happens in that situation is you need to have the humility to recognize, I can't walk through this like Jesus would. I can't walk through it without my heart being cold. Maybe I think I have self-control because I'm like, screw this person. I get apathetic and it's not heavily emotional. Maybe I can hold on and keep my face a mask and other people don't know I'm angry. That's not victory. Victory is that you have love and compassion through that person no matter how many rocks they throw at your face. No matter how many times they hit you upside the head, you can still love them. Forgive them, Father. They know not what they do. That's the standard, and you can't do it. We can't. And so if you take a moment right at the beginning and say, Jesus, I'm being tempted right now, and I can't face this temptation. I can't overcome it in myself. I can't do it, but you can. I'm not going to try to do it. I'm going to yield this to you. Be my protection. Be my patience. Be my compassion. Be my love. I trust you to do it. I yield the job to you and I trust you to do it. You're already doing it now. I take it by faith. You're already doing it now. Thank Him for it. Like it says in Philippians 4, you can put your petition before God with thanksgiving, and the peace of Christ will guard your heart and mind. Right? That's what you need in that moment. Is to take a moment, and it's true. You can take it to the bank. If you are being tempted to sin, and that is anger like that, that's a temptation to sin, you can take it to the bank that if you turn to Jesus and you yield that situation to Him, and you truly you leave that in God's hands, and you truly trust Him, to the point of thanksgiving, to the point of, I thank you because you've already done it. You're already doing it now. If you truly yield and you truly believe, God's not going to fail to step in and overcome that temptation. And that's of any sin. We could get way outside of this sermon, lust, anything like that. If in that moment you say, God, I'm being tempted and I can't do this, but you can, and you yield and you trust, it'll work. If it doesn't work, you're not yielding or you're not trusting. It's one of the two. And if you dig it in prayer, God will show you. And it's amazing the kind of things that can happen, the little peace that will drop over you if you do that prayer, and you'll be able to walk through that conversation. And it'll be completely like, I'm not this guy. I'm not patient like this. Yeah, Jesus is that guy. That's the whole point of that prayer. It's a Jesus take the wheel situation. So the first two things, warfare and protection, two forms of prayer. The third point I could put anywhere in here. I just put it on 3, but I could put it at any point at the beginning here because this is technically what you're doing. Is number 3, pause. give that person time to stop themselves. A lot of people, the second somebody acts irritated, they have a snappy response, they get a sour face, they roll their eyes, anything like that, they're instantly on the defensive. They're either being instantly passive aggressive or they're just full on like, what are you doing? And they just snap at people. They're very sensitive. And the truth is, you're not living at that level. You're not the guy who can walk through life and never have a moment where something shows on your face before you have a chance to think about it. There are times when you get irritated. There are times when something happens and you snap, you say something, you have a little bit of gruffness. You're holding that person to a standard you can't walk by. They need a minute, and you should be willing to give people a minute to figure out how they're going to handle this. Their problem, the moment you're realizing they're angry, there's a good chance that's the moment they're realizing that they're angry. The moment you realize this guy's got something against me, it's probably the moment he's realizing that he has something against you. And he needs time, just like you would need time to figure out, is this a me problem that I need to let this go? I'm just offended for no good reason. Or is this, we need to have a conversation. He needs time to figure that out and make that choice. And that's what you got to give him. You got to give him time to work it out. And when we come along, we look at you being passive aggressive, you're going to really want that person to give you that time. You're going to want them to give you a minute to figure it out and not jump down your throat before you realize what you're even upset about. So you want to sow as you want to reap in this situation and give it a pause. You're already doing that because the prayer is giving them time. You take that second to do warfare. You take that other second to do the protection prayer. You're already giving a pause, but intentionally give this person time. It might be saying, well, I'm going to wait until the third snappy thing, or it might be a time thing. I'm going to give them 3 minutes. I'm going to give them 4 minutes to stop being passive aggressive. But you need to give them that pause. The same amount of time you would want in that situation to work it out. You got to give them a chance. But you can't give them forever. Because what is that? That's just submitting to the passive aggression. There's a grace period that you need to extend to say, okay, you might even give them a little look. Like, okay. Usually just you getting quiet to do the prayers is going to let them know that they've communicated something. And that means they got to think about what they just did and figure out where am I going? Am I going to, sorry, let this go? Or we need to talk? Or am I going to continue doing this and be passive aggressive? They need the time to figure that out. You need the time to figure out what they're doing. Everybody bumps their toe. Everybody gets tripped up and has them. Everybody gets grieved by other people. Grievances are part of life. And you need a moment to get your bearings. And you want to allow that for that person. It's an unreasonable thing to be like, oh man, my wife, if I grieve her, should not respond. She should just already know what's going on. That's ridiculous. Like, that's not true. My friend should just always be, copacetic. It's like you have to understand, in all likelihood, you did grieve them. It's probably legitimate. Most of the time it is. We're sinners. We do things that are inappropriate. We do things that are just thoughtless. Like, I just did not think about how that affected you at all. I was thinking about me, because I usually am. I was busy. I was thinking about me. I was not thinking about you. And that was not cool. I'm sorry. Like, usually that you kind of have an attitude where, like, I could have sinned before God and man right now. I need to take a moment and sow mercy because I might need it right now. Yeah. Not next fight. I might need it for this one. And I want God on my side. That's what you're praying for, right? God, don't let me be destroyed. Don't let the enemy eat me right now. Tear me up, rip my guts out on this one. Protect me. Then you need to make sure that you are on God's side. So give that pause. Like I said, I can put the pause right at the beginning. It's all this stuff. The first 3 or 4 steps are all pause. So the 4th step is also a continuation of that pause. And it's what we call peeling the onion. You guys know this exercise. And what is it? You say, what's bothering me? You just look inside yourself and say, why is this bothering me? And then you answer that question from your heart. You can also ask God if you can hear clearly. Sometimes people have trouble when they're stirred up hearing God. But if you can hear God, that's even better. But in general, you just ask yourself, what's bothering me? And let it come forward. And then you take that and you go, okay, why does that bother me? And then you take that. And usually 3 or 4 layers of that onion in, asking why, all of a sudden you'll have it. And you'll know, like, oh, this is what really bugs me about this situation. Because believe me, if someone's being passive-aggressive to you, you're going to react the wrong way. Your instinct is to be offended. And your instinct to be offended, it's weird. You're an adult person. But if somebody's aggressive to you and you don't know why, guess where you put the blame?
That person.
You put the blame on them, even deeper level. You put the blame on you. You put it right where your worst wound is. And that's why it blows up. That's why people have a really hard time working through those things, because neither person really knows what they're angry about. Have you ever been in an argument? Like, I'm talking married guys, so I'll say this. Have you ever been in an argument with your wife and it gets resolved and you guys don't want to stop?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, so next time I'll ask before I use your stuff. You know, before I get your tool out of the tool. And then you go, yeah, you better. And then you just grab something else and you keep going. You know why you did that? Because what really upset you wasn't that you took the tool. It's one of those things where it's the kind of argument where you say it's the principle of the thing. The problem is you don't know what the principle is. You don't really know what you're angry about. Something sets you off, but there's 5 layers of onion on top of that thing. All you know is the pain is there, and that I need to do more. I need to yell more. I need to punch a hole in the wall to communicate how. But you can't communicate to her what she's done wrong if you don't even know what it is. You can't even figure out whether she really did something wrong, or you're working out some trauma from when you were 4 years old that's got nothing to do with her. Until you peel the onion, you don't know. So on both sides, if you're going to go into a possible argument, passive aggressiveness, that's where it's going. If you don't mess with it, it's going to be an argument. If you go and pray about it, it could still be an argument. God could say you need to take a stand, you need to, hold the boundary lines in your marriage. That's inappropriate behavior, you need to do that. Either way, there's a high likelihood of an argument. So what both sides need to do is they need to figure out what they don't like about this thing in reality. And a lot of times, it doesn't seem natural here, I get that. Like, they're being passive aggressive at you. Of course you're offended because they're being passive aggressive. That's the surface level of the onion. It makes sense. It fits. But you know what? 9 times out of 10, that's not why you're angry. Maybe she's passive aggressive at you, and you jump to another conclusion because you've been feeling terrible today. You go to somewhere else in your mind. It's very, very easy. Like we were talking about, the example of somebody doesn't make you breakfast in the morning. They made it for everybody else. But maybe you're getting up late. Now there's an innocent explanation. She didn't know when you were going to get up. Maybe she's got something set aside. Maybe she's planning on scrambling up some new eggs fresh for you. You don't know anything.
Yeah.
But where do you jump to? It's probably because she thinks I'm a lazy bum for getting up late. And then but I have a good reason. I had to stay up late to do this thing for the ministry. Why would she judge me? What is that really about? Is that about her judging you? Or is it about that you have your own issue?
Yeah. And
you feel sensitive. Now in that situation, you probably feel she's being passive aggressive to me, not making me that food. That's a sign. She's telling me she's angry with me without telling me that she's angry with me. But maybe it's not. It could be nothing. Yeah. Half the time you're going to walk into a situation like this person's being passive aggressive to me, you're going to figure out, I instigated this thing. I just didn't even know I did it. I've been walking around with an attitude and so thick on me, I didn't even realize I had one. Barely talked to this lady, and now she's doing something, and it's not even that. So what you have to do is you got to take the time to peel that onion, figure out what am I so bothered about? You might realize I was bothered before I ever came in this room. I woke up and there's something squishing my chest. Maybe I need to kick something off myself. But we got to peel that out. We got to figure out what is actually the problem. And obviously, if it's a you problem, you need to take the time to pray about that and get that out of the way before you try to fix the passive. Take the plank out of your own eye before you try to pick the speck out of the passive-aggressive person's eye in front of you. You got to do you first. You got to be in a place where you're like, I can help this person. I'm not flipped out. I'm not carrying my own grievance. I get some resolution. So peel that onion. It takes time. All of this takes time. Someone's being passive-aggressive to you, you're going to think, I don't have time for this. You're right. You don't have time for the thousands upon thousands of hours of passive aggression that will continue to happen if you don't take the time to stop it.
Yeah.
You need to waste some time now so you don't have to waste way more time later on. You need to be willing to waste the time to do it the right way. And this particular step is where people skip it. They don't do it, or they peel it like, there we go, and they barely put any energy into it at all. It's an important step. You want to do a healthy conversation, figure out why things bother you before you start talking. Figure out where it's really coming from. And then you actually know what you're trying to achieve. Most arguments, you're reaching for a goal in that argument. You don't even know what it is. And you get to the end of it and you're like, I wasn't really satisfied when she apologized. I wasn't satisfied when he promised not to never do it again. It wasn't like, and then like I yelled at her until she cried, and then I didn't feel good that she cried. And it was like, well, what? You don't even know. You're just flailing around trying to figure out what you want in that situation. And you're hurting another person while you're doing it. You're sinning before God while you're doing it. That's foolish. Take a knee, figure out what's going on. And if you're smart, hold that up to God and get some instruction on what to do about it. Is this a turn the other cheek situation? Do I need to draw a line? Does it need to be right now? Should it wait until later? These are important conversations to have with God before you start talking to your brother or your sister. It's not, you'll save yourself so much trouble if you can be the person that figures out what's bothering you and lift that up to God before you lift it up to somebody else, before you lift up your voice to somebody else. It'll save you. There's so much drama we create for ourselves. Peel the onion. Why does it bug me? You resolve that. You are not bothered anymore. You're looking at that person. They're still being passive-aggressive. They're still creating this gross atmosphere. And it would, you know what? You'd think, oh, I can just look the other way. It's a submissive state. To consent to that, to let somebody do that in your space, you're going to open the door to the enemy. You're going to sabotage the protection that Jesus is putting on you. You will get offended. You will blow up. Something bad's going to come out of it. You have to speak up. That's the last step. You got to call them out. You've given them a good pause period and you've done your stuff. You prayed the warfare prayer. You dealt with, you asked for protection over your own heart against getting offended, and you dealt with whatever offense is already there. You peeled the onion. You figured out, what's going on here. You've yielded it up. Now, your pause period is over. This person's still slamming cabinets. They're just fumigating the atmosphere with their negativity. And you know what? It's time. You gave them that time. You gave them time to deal with it on their own, or to talk to you about it, and they've done neither. They have chosen to be passive-aggressive, and it's time to call them out and say, I don't do that. That's that's not an option. You have two options. You can deal with it. I shouldn't even feel anything. If you've dealt with it, there shouldn't be any tude you're sporting here, bro. You don't need to be sporting any tude, man. It should be over already. You should handle it. If you're going to handle it, handle it. If you need to have a conversation, we should be talking. It should be one or the other. This is not an option. That's the attitude. One thing I'm going to say about this. When you're calling somebody out on being passive-aggressive, the number one thing to avoid is being passive-aggressive. It's really easy.
Yeah.
It's really easy to say, what's wrong with you? That's passive-aggressive. It's you being aggressive, but not really coming out with it. saying, I'm offended by how you're acting. That's what you're really feeling, but you're going to say, what's wrong with you? Or you're going to say, is there something wrong? With a mock like concern that's really about, oh, you can't handle it, you're having trouble, did you fall in the sin, And it's aggressive. You got to watch yourself, that you're not being passive. You're being assertive. You're saying what's going on. And number two, you're not being aggressive. You need to watch the aggressiveness. That's not how you resolve these situations. You need to have a guard up about that. I would encourage, because this is what you do, the thing you're most likely to do, if you're going to try to be like, I'm sick with passive aggressive, I'm going to call this person out. The most likely thing for you to do is the cheapest, most cowardly thing, which is to ask them like a one-sentence question. What's wrong? You okay? Dude, are you upset with me? And it's these little cheap things. It's what? It's the easiest thing for you to do, right? It takes the least amount of courage to throw something else like that out. And it's most likely to be offensive to them. You get a little bit of both. You're passive. You're not really calling it out all the way. It's a cheap question. It can have a cheap answer. You know what they're going to say? Nothing's wrong. Or what do you think's wrong? It's going to be a cheap answer. And you're throwing it out. You get to be a little bit aggressive, a little bit passive. You're being passive-aggressive back. Doesn't seem like you are, but if you really look at it, you are. You don't want to do that. Stay away from the cheap questions. It's a good thing to ask questions, but not those ones. You got to check your heart. So what does it look like? I think that the correct attitude, the correct approach to someone who's passive-aggressive is what I've decided to call positive attentive. Positive means that you're giving this guy every possible chance. Like, you don't really know. He hasn't told you what he's upset about, whether he's upset with you or any other thing. You don't even know 100% that he is upset. He's just acting upset, right? He's slamming cabinets, he's stomping around, it sounds like he's angry, he's cursing under his breath, but you don't really know. To be positive is to say, I'm going to be open to the best possible answer for this guy. I'm going to think the best out of this situation. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt in all these situations. I'm not going to be aggressive. I'm going to be positive. That doesn't mean I'm going to be blind to what's going on. I will accept what's really happening, and that's where the attentive comes to. The attentive is I'm not passive, I'm attentive. I'm paying attention, and I'm being very open that I see everything that's going on. I'm bringing this to a verbal level, but I'm doing it in a positive way. I'm not talking about positive thinking, or that people have that idea with positivity like it's going to be a blanket to cover up something. I'm going to ignore the negativity. You can be very positive while pointing out something very negative. You're just not taking the opportunity to be aggressive. A lot of that has to do with tonality, it has to do with your body language, it has to do with where your heart's at. But that's the goal that you want to set. I'm going to be positive and attentive. I'm paying attention. I'm going to talk about what's really happening. But what am I not going to do? I'm not going to jump to a judgment. I'm not going to think I know why. That's one of the big temptations you're praying God to keep you away from. Because what you're going to do is you're going to say, he's angry with me because he's like all the other people who rejected me in my life. And then guess what? You have now you've tangled up this small problem with the nest of all the other problem relationships you've ever had in your life. He has to fix everything that's ever went wrong with you to fix this. You've just made this into a spaghetti soup. You're not going to untangle that anymore. You need to stop from the judgment. Just handle what's in front of you. And the best way to handle what's in front of you is to not jump to the conclusion that you understand what's happening. You don't. What you want to do is stay away from the judgment, and you want to state what's happening out loud. Someone's banging around the cabinets. You want to say, hey, I noticed that you're really banging those cabinets today. You're kind of stomping around. You're usually much quieter when you walk. You're really putting some effort in today. You you close that quite forcefully. You seem to be cursing under your breath. I can't really make out what you're saying, but it definitely sounds aggressive. You want to stick with what? The facts. Just the facts. If you say, hey, what are you so angry about? What are they going to say? I'm not angry. Well, in a very angry voice, they're going to tell you. And what are they doing? They're being passive aggressive. Verbally, they're saying, I'm not upset with you. In every other way, they're saying, hell yes, I'm pissed with you. That's how they can perpetuate it. But if you point out what they're actually doing, they can't deny it. The closer you stick to the facts, the more that it's undeniable. I'm pointing out what you're doing. Why I think something, I'm pointing it out. First thing you're going to say is, man, you're kind of, usually we talk a lot more than this. And you're kind of slamming the cabinets and stuff. And so you're putting this beforehand. Then you're going to add your perspective, but you're not going to say it like it's a fact. You're going to say it like it's your perspective. So you're knocking around a bunch of stuff. You're slamming doors. It makes me kind of think that maybe I might have done something to offend you. Maybe you have a grievance. And then what are you going to do? You're going to ask a question. Is that what's going on? Have I done something that offended you? What are you doing? You're saying, look, here's an option. There's an option here. You can either go this way and say there's nothing wrong and start letting this go, or you can talk to me about it. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend I keep your secret of your anger for you and carry your anger. I'm not going to do that. Now, what's the most likely thing that's going to happen if you do that? You say that. You seem to be knocking, banging around here. I can't help but feel like maybe you're upset with me or something. I mean, you just poured water all over yourself, brother. You're like, oh, it was a good point. Did it get you? Oh, the conviction. He's making direct eye contact with me. I couldn't ignore it. Okay.
Sorry.
No, don't worry. It was fun. But the most likely thing that's going to happen with a passive aggressive, this person's got a history of this. Like we all do. But this person got it. Most likely, what are they going to say when you say, is there something wrong? They're like, no, I'm fine. I'm so great. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for your concern. I'm good. What are they doing? They're lying to you. So what are you going to do? Like, liar, you are. No, you're not going to do that. I told you, don't be accused of it. What are you going to do? You're going to believe them. You're going to be like, okay, yeah, I mean, we're friends. I'm going to take you at your word. That's what you're going to do. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to ask a clarifying question. This is the one that gets them, man. Are you ready for it? When they go, yeah, we're fun. Yeah, we're super good. Then you go, oh, we're cool then, all right? We're buddies then? We're good? We're good. It's powerful. It's a powerful thing to say in that situation. Because the moment that you start taking them at their word, it ruins the passive aggressiveness. When they go, no, you need to understand that I'm pissed with you, but I'm not going to say it. Come on, play along. Yeah. And the moment that you say, okay, it looks like you're angry, but if that's what you're saying, okay, it ruins it. It ruins it. I don't know another way to say it. It's like disappointing to them. They're like, he's not good. It ruins the situation. Like, can you imagine you're being passive aggressive with somebody, and you're like, yeah, we're real good. And then you go, oh, so, yeah, I was kind of concerned. I was probably misreading it. I believe you, bro. If you're telling me that we're good, I'm so relieved. We are good. Mm-hmm. You give them that last chance to be like, no, we're not good. Like, give them the chance to seal it, And if they just keep lying, then you're like, okay, cool. And then you go on with it. You know what you haven't done? You haven't submitted to their anger. You haven't said, okay, I'll sit under this with you. So you can walk free of it. And you know what? If it's bothering you that they're still banging stuff around, you go, hey, I'm sorry. I know that we settled this and we're cool. We're buddies. I'm with you. It's just, I got a thing about people doing this. It makes me feel like you might be upset. So if you can, do me the favor and just a little quieter with the cabinets. Do you get like this is just like that person's going to say it eventually. It's like, God, so pissed at you. And that's good. You want them to be like, I thought you might have been. Liar, you're lying to me. But what you're doing is you're making them face the fact that they're not telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like, don't join them in the lie. Don't blow up on them. Don't accuse them of it. They just want you to do that so they can say, you can't prove that, you can't prove that, you're just accusing me of it. Don't do any of that. Just say, okay, we're friends. I'll take you at your word. I'll believe you. If you're saying this has nothing to do with me, I'll believe you. You haven't told me that there's anything wrong. You're acting like it, but hey, maybe you're an idiot when it comes to communicating with body language, like people are, right? Yeah. Maybe you're angry about something else. Maybe this is how you're happy. Slamming things. Maybe that's how you celebrate. That doesn't make sense, but okay. Give them the benefit of the doubt all the way around, and it will ruin their ability to have that argument. They can't do it. Then what happens is you might actually get them, like that's how you handle it. They're just in denial mode. And probably what will happen then, if they don't break at some point and get aggressive, they're going to like walk around and try to be passive aggressive for a minute. And it's just like you in the bathroom. They're like, I can't do it if no one will play with me. And then they will go and sulk somewhere, probably. They might come back later on, like brood it up and then come in fighting, right? Passive aggressiveness is I don't have the courage to get in a fight unless I'm angry enough. So I'm going to try to get us angry enough to have the fight. So they might need to go and do something else to get themselves there. But okay, that's fine. You don't have to sit under it. They can go fumigate themselves, you know? Yeah. And then you can deal with it when they want to talk with you. That's fine. That's a better solution than letting them be passive aggressive, right? If that fight happens, which it probably will at some point, that's a good thing. People are like, oh, this is like creating more fights. No, those fights have always been there. It's just you're dealing with them now. That's way better than them just poisoning and embittering a relationship. Deal with them. It's harder, it's more work, but you will have a better relationship with that person. You know, granted that they don't walk away at some point, that they have the choice to do that. They just want to be bitter and they don't want it to work out. They can walk away. But if that's the case, there was never any hope to begin with. You're just recognizing that now. But deal with it with them. Now the best thing to do is they're going to come and they're going to launch a fight with you. Again, the best thing is to be attentive and to listen. Our attitude when someone's passive aggressive is like, this person is communicating this the wrong way, but I might have absolutely actually done something wrong. I should not be so cocky or so prideful to think that just because this person is choosing a dumb, sinful way to communicate their grievance, that does not mean that their grievance is illegitimate. I might have genuinely sinned against this person. And honestly, the worse you sin against someone, the more likely that they're going to go off half-cocked and communicate it the wrong way. You're not going to grow as a Christian unless you can hear through that stuff and say, look, the more angry a person is, the worse they are communicating in a situation, it's actually more likely that I've actually hurt them at some point and in some way, and I got to sort through the garbage and find what's really there. And again, chances are they haven't peeled their onion. They probably don't even fully understand why they're angry, but it will still diffuse the situation if you're really listening. You're repeating back what they say to you. So this is the problem. And they haven't peeled the onion, that helps them peel the onion. Because they'll go, no, it's that and this. And then you can help someone without even them realizing that you're helping them peel the onion, but you just bring it back to them. So this is what's bothering you. You're doing the same thing, right? What's bothering me? And you answer the question from your heart. What bothers you about that? You can do the same thing with another person. You gotta be careful that it's not too robotic or too annoying, like why? That's not, but you can repeat things back to someone to clarify. So that's what's bothering you. And they'll say, yes, but actually, it's more this. And you get into it. The most important thing that you can do in a situation, and I think a lot of people don't get this about arguments. Most people, the reason people argue is because they don't really know what they're doing. They're little kids. It's like because when they were little kids, they never had someone show them how to resolve a conflict. So they're just like a little kid when they're angry. You ever see a kid? Our daughter Maggie lately has been trying to express her anger, and it's cute. She was like, ah! And she her whole face contorts, and she's just like, oh, I'm so angry right now. And she'll just say it out loud because she doesn't know what to do. And that's where a parent should step in and start teaching their child how to handle that situation. That didn't happen for most of us, right? So we end up learning from probably the person who gets their way the most. And that might not be the person who's very healthy. There might be a person that's horrible relationships because they're blowing everything up. But we follow their example, or we just follow our family's example, we end up in a bad place. One thing that you have to understand, if you have hurt somebody, I'm just going to assume in this situation that you have they're legitimately grieved. You sinned against them. You were thoughtless, you made a bad comment, you made a joke about your wife and it was hurtful. And she has the right to be grieved. She doesn't have the right to be passive aggressive. You rightly push back against that. But she has the right to be grieved, and now she's expressing it. And now you need to essentially reward that behavior and be like, yeah, this will resolve things. The passive aggressive never did. This will actually get you what you want. But there's something that's very important here. People who are passive aggressive a lot, and I think everybody has a little bit of it, so don't feel like you're above it. But if you're passive aggressive, and more passive aggressive you are, it tends to be true that you are revenge based in that situation. What you want is for that person to feel as bad as you feel. That's what revenge is about. It's not about fixing the problem. It's not about preventing it from happening again. It's like, you hurt me, now I want to hurt you. Mm-hmm. And that is not appropriate. That's not how God fixes things. God doesn't go, do you know how much you broke my heart your entire life as a sinner? I'm going to put you in a purgatory where you feel all that emotional pain for a million years to feel it like I felt it, and then I'll forgive you. That is not okay. It's absolutely okay for somebody to come into a situation and say, you hurt me, and I feel betrayed in our relationship when you did that, and put that forward. You sinned against me, and you broke our intimacy. Those are two very real things. People have a right to bring it up, and you should fix those things. You should apologize. You should say, I'm sorry. And apology, like, this is where it gets muddy. Because if you're revenge-based, you don't really want the apology. You want the humiliation of the apology. So if the person apologizes, but they don't look like they are hurting enough, you don't want the apology. You're like, forget your apology. That didn't hurt you enough. Like, I want you to grovel. I want you to be broken because you hurt me, and I want you to be hurt too. And so you'll reject an apology instead of having a real definition. You know what a real apology is? It's saying, I have sinned. That's all it is. It doesn't need to be emotional. It just needs to be true. You're just honestly saying, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. That's all that person should want. And if they want more than that, you have to say, I can't give you more than that. For a healthy relationship, we can't be like, okay, you hurt me now. We can't be doing eye for eye in a relationship. It'll kill a marriage, it'll kill a friendship, it'll kill a business, it'll kill a church. You can't do that. You have to say, I was wrong if you were wrong. And then what you need to do in that situation, so you apologize, that's what it is. You say, I did something that was wrong. I should have never done that. And then you need to say something like this. I will do my very best to never do that to you again. Right? Because you hurt them, they have a reason to be fearful that you're going to do it again. Yeah. You need to say, I'm going to do my very best to not do that again. And then what you need to do is exactly in the laws of Moses, right? If it was a relational sin, you had to give a guilt offering. There was an offering for the sin itself. That's Jesus dying on the cross. That's us repenting, apologizing, saying, confessing this is a sin. That's all covered there. But you would make a guilt offering. And a guilt offering is poorly named. That's not what it is in the Hebrew. I'm just saying that name because that's probably what it's called in your Bible if you want to look it up in Leviticus. It's usually referred to as the guilt offering. But what it is this is a reparation. If you stole something, you have to give it back. And you have to give more back than you actually took. You have to give a fifth more. Why? Because what you're doing in there is you're investing into the relationship you just broke. I stole from my neighbor. And me giving it back and saying sorry isn't sufficient. I need to make an investment that says, I really didn't mean that. I wasn't thinking. You didn't put your dishes into the washing machine. You just left them there. Your wife's like, that sucks. I just did all these dishes. And now you're not even going to rinse it and put it in there. And you're like, you know what? I was thoughtless. That's true. I was absolutely thoughtless. I was not thinking about you. We do have a deal that I'm supposed to do that. Obviously, you're going to get stuck with it when I do that. That wasn't cool. I'm sorry. I'm going to really try my best not to do that again. And then what do? You go and you do your dish. And then you do the rest of the dishes. But you tell them first that you're going to. You tell them in the moment. You go, you know what? I'll go do that dish right now. And you know what? I really want you to understand that I just wasn't thinking. I didn't mean it like that. You are very, very important to me. I want you to feel appreciated for the dishes you do. So how about you ask them, how about I just do the rest of the dishes just to show you that that's not, I don't think you're my dishwasher. That's not what I was trying to do. And you smooth it over. Like there's a reason psychologically why men will bring women flowers when they do something wrong. And it's not to replace the apology. It's to say, I treated our relationship badly. I sinned against you. I treated you like you weren't really worth what you're worth to me. And so even though we fix that, I want to make an investment. I want to make a sacrifice that says you mean something to me. It's a very important thing. A lot of guys try to skip it, especially guys in marriages. I don't know why we're particularly bad at that. I'm not saying you have to go buy flowers. Usually it's better to make it fit the situation. But if you screwed up, you just need to say, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I'm going to try my best not to do that again. I'm going to go fix it. And can I do this on top of that just to show you that I really do care? And you'd be surprised how much that will just take a lot of time. You could blow up in a huge, crazy passive aggression for 8 hours, then blow up into an argument, and nothing gets resolved. You do that, it's just fixed. And there's a little glow on it. There's a little, like, he invested in our relationship. And that's with friendship, too, man. Like, there are times with friends where we just, my bad. Yeah. And if you said, dude, that was wrong, man. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. And I'm telling you, I'm going to try. I'm not perfect, but I'm going to give it my best effort that I never treat you like that again. Because you mean a lot to me. And you know what? If you will let me fix it, and then let me do this for you too. If you don't like that, maybe something else. Give me an idea, but let me do something for you. Because I really want you to understand that you mean a lot. You'd be surprised. And it's just like, nobody taught us as kids how to do that. Like, it's this wisdom. You find it in the Bible. This is technology has existed on how to fix a relationship. But we'll even think like, oh, it's kind of like bribery. It's like, not if you do it right. It's not that at all. It's an investment. It's making a sacrifice for someone because you know what? I just stole something from you. I forced you to sacrifice something you didn't want to sacrifice. So now I'm going to do the exact opposite to make up for it. It's not bribery. It's saying, no, look, maybe I had to apologize. Maybe I had to give you back your stuff. But I'm doing this on top out of my own free will. Because I'm sorry, and I love you, and I really do want you to feel better. It's amazing what that will do in that situation. But you have to be able to know, these are the things I should do. I should apologize. If I've done something wrong, I should admit it. I should say I'm not going to do it again to the best of my ability. And I should try to repair the damage that I've done and throw an investment on top to show that the relationship is important. Obviously, the smaller the thing, the small, doesn't have to be a huge thing. It's a small thing. But that's what it should be, to smooth it over. The important thing is, if you know that's what it is, then you know that's all it is. And because people will tend to try to, they want to torture you a little bit, that they were hurt, they want to hurt back. They have that immature juvenile part. We still have it. You haven't mastered it. I guarantee you haven't mastered it yourself. You can't expect that your wife or your friend or your brother in Christ or the guy you're doing ministry with, that they fully mastered it. They probably haven't. But if you can be the guy that will figure that out and bring it to the table, it will work out so much better than you can imagine. If that person tries to do that, you just need to be very open with them. You just need to be like, look, all I can really do is admit that I did something wrong, resolve to do a better job, and to make this right. I fix this as much as it's possible. I can clean up the dish I left out. I can do a little bit on top of that just to show you I care. But if you're trying to punish me, if you're trying to avenge yourself, I'm sorry, that's not your job. You're not my judge. You're not God. This isn't how relationships work. Someone should have told you that at some point. And sometimes you have to have it that open of a conversation just to like check that. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm sorry, honey, I'm not gonna feel bad. I'm not gonna sit here and flog myself, because it's not like that's not oh, I feel bad. That's not really, it's revenge. You need to hurt. You need to suffer. It's like, no, I need to make it right. I don't need to grovel. I don't need to suffer. I need to make it right with you. I need to put our relationship back together. And that's like, there's a lot of times people have a big damage in their relationship or in their marriage. They never recover because it just becomes a cycle of vengeance. Vengeance should have never been on the table. That's not what we do. We make it right. We make it right and we forgive and we let people make it right. That's what we're supposed to do. Call it out. Again, I'm going to hit these couple of steps here. Don't judge. State the facts. Stick to the facts. This is what you're doing that makes me think that you might be upset. State your judgment, but keep it. I mean, it's like, whoa there, big fella. Rein yourself in, you know. You're going to want to turn that judgment aggressive. You're going to want to put some spice on your words. Keep it simple and soft. And just say, look, you're slamming some cabinets. A lot of times in the past that's meant that you're angry with me. I'm just going to ask you straight out. Is there a problem? Are you upset with me for some reason? If they say, no, I'm not, then you go, oh, that's great. So I'm going to take you at your word. You're absolutely sure everything's cool. This is just, you just feel like shutting doors loud today. Get that, re-qualify the question, make them stick it, and that will get you to where you need to go. And then you have the conversation. If you screwed up, admit it, apologize, say you'll do better in the future, offer to fix the situation as much as you can, and then you know what? Then you need to walk away. If they want to keep raking you over it, be like, look, I've taken care of this. And if you can't find it in your heart to forgive me, okay, that's between you and your Creator. I'm going to step back, let you give you some time to figure that out. But I've done everything that I can, that God wants me to do to fix this. And just leave them with that incredibly gross decision to just like someone's trying to make it better and they won't let them. The desire for vengeance and just probably it's not even vengeance against you. They tangled this with all the trauma in their life and they're not ready to forgive for all that. And they just need to separate that out. But it's a very, very powerful thing to do. We're going to run through, if you're passive aggressive, this is going to go a lot quicker. If you catch yourself being passive aggressive, again, you're probably going to notice it right when you do your little snappy thing. You slam a door and you notice that you're doing these things. The first thing I'm going to tell you to do, you're probably not going to listen to me the first couple times you do it. But really, you should get some privacy if at all possible. Walk away from other people. Remember, you can't be passive aggressive. There's nobody to be passive aggressive to. Retreat. Go to the bathroom. Go for a walk. Get some distance so you can have the time to work it out. It is going to take time. It's an investment of time. Make sure you have it. If you're around other people, you might not get that much time to work it out. Especially if you're not good at holding it in and working it out without. If you're so used to passive aggressive that you're everybody's in your splash radius, whether you want them to be or not. It's coming out your pores. Leave the room. Go to the bathroom. Most people will leave you alone if you go to the bathroom. You know that lid? It's not the toilet seat, it's the lid. That goes down so you can sit there, not go to the bathroom, just pray. It's an amazing room. Just enjoy it. So there's always a bathroom close. Always is. Get some privacy. That's the first thing. Number two, this is going to sound very familiar. Pray. Spiritual warfare. Make sure that this isn't spiritual. You'd be surprised how often you wake up in the morning and you start being snippy with your wife or snippy with your kids or your uncle's visiting or whatever's going on, or you're on your way to work and somebody calls you, you'd be surprised if you paused, if you stepped into a quiet place and you pushed spiritually, how often that just clears up. And you're like, wow, he was trying to slip one by me again. Crazy devil. Third step. First is get privacy. Second, spiritual warfare prayer. 3, pray that you don't sin in your anger. The number one thing that people do that's stupid in this situation is they say, I'm genuinely grieved, I have a right to be angry, and that gives me carte blanche to do whatever I want to do. That's not true. The Bible says, do not sin in your anger. It doesn't say that there aren't going to be times when you'll be angry and you genuinely have a right to be angry. It says don't sin in your anger, don't let the sun go down on your anger. It's saying deal with it. And don't let it turn to sin. So that needs to be your prayer. After you make sure it's not just the devil, you need to turn to yourself and say, God, I have been offended. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it definitely seems like this person just hurt me and I'm angry. Lord, don't let me sin in my anger. If you're genuinely grieved, don't let it become your sin if somebody just sinned against you. Don't let that happen. It's the same prayer we were talking about. God, I can't handle this. There's not a person on this planet that can walk in anger and not sin. You do it long enough, you will sin. So you need to lift it up and say, God, this is temptation too big for me, man. I'm not like you, Jesus. I cannot be silent as the sheep before the shearers while people are offending me. I have a hard time with this. I can't do it. I'm not going to try. I yield it to you. I trust you. And the peace of God will guard your heart and mind in Jesus Christ. That's the promise. You really surrender it. You really believe him. And you will feel God come around you and protect you in that situation. Lean into that prayer. Excuse me. Third step. You know where this is going, guys? Peel the onion. Fourth step. Peel the onion. You're not going to want to do it, but you don't really know why you're angry. 9 out of 10 times you think you're angry for this. That's not really true. You got to stop. Take a deep breath. 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. What the heck is bothering me? That's it. Answer the question from your heart, and then ask the question again. Answer it, ask the question again, until it clicks in. That's what I'm upset about. You might very quickly find the whole thing just diffuses right then. As soon as you figure out what it's about, it just diffuses. Sometimes you uncoil it, and God just says, lay your hand on your heart, son, pray with me, and begins to heal something right there. And something that could have been so negative becomes something so positive, something that gets healed, maybe even broken in you for a long time. Peel the onion, deal with it. Now maybe you peel it all the way down, you get to the core of this thing, it's like, this guy still hurt me. This guy did sin against me, and it is hurting me, and I do feel rejected, or whatever. Maybe it's completely legitimate. You know what you do? Step 5. You hold that up to God and you say, what do you want me to do with this? And God's going to tell you to do one of 2 things. He's either going to say, turn the other cheek, son. I've turned the cheek for you so many times. You can turn the cheek for this guy. And you can wrestle that out with God and get it right. Here's the thing. If you turn the other cheek, nobody else should even know. They shouldn't know that you, maybe they know you were upset and you left the room, you came back and you were good again, but you shouldn't have any sort of atmosphere hovering around you. You should deal with it. That's your bad. Deal with it. Deal with it with God. The second, if it's not time to turn the cheek, then it's probably time to flip some tables, Jesus style. Doesn't mean that you are aggressive. Doesn't mean that you're violent. It doesn't mean that you're out for vengeance. You need to check yourself on all that stuff. You need to make sure that you've dealt with the heart, with God in prayer. If he says you need to speak up, you need to draw this boundary, this is inappropriate behavior, whatever it is, you need to be very careful that you say, God, what exactly do I need to do? What is my goal? What am I? Because you might think that it's your job to change it, and it's just your job to point it out. You might think it's your job to do this or that. You need to make sure you know what your mission is. Half the time it's just saying, look, you did this. It's very inappropriate. I'm just going to let you know I don't appreciate it. Please try. If you care, try to change it. Sometimes in a relationship it's drawing a boundary. Sometimes it's setting a consequence. Sometimes you need to be like, look, come over for Thanksgiving and this always happens, and listen, next time it happens, I'm just packing up my kids and leaving. I'll come back again, we'll try again, but if you do this, the consequence is always going to be we leave. So then you can decide. If you want us to leave, you just do that. If you want us to stay, don't. And sometimes you need that in a relationship. Sometimes you need to do that. Like when you argue with me, you talk to me in a way that is inappropriate, and honestly, I will not sit around and listen to it. I will leave the room. We can have the conversation later, have it right up to the point that you use that kind of language with me, because I don't put up with it. Created in the image and likeness of God, and I don't have to put up with it. I will meet you. No matter how big your sins are, I will forgive you. I'll restore the relationship. If you show up, I'll show up with you. But that does not mean that I'm going to defile myself to climb into the pig slop with you. I'm not going to do it. We call people up out of that stuff. We don't climb in with them. It's a big thing. Again, I think, remember, the same things that are okay for another person in that situation are okay for you. The same things that are inappropriate are inappropriate. You got to check yourself. You can't be looking for revenge. You need to check that part of yourself. I want them to hurt the way I just got hurt. You need to be like, that is sin. That is evil. That is Satan owning real estate in my heart. I need to yield that to God. I have a right to come to somebody and hope and desire for them to admit when they've sinned, for them to see the light and want to fix it, and to want them to make an investment. You can't necessarily demand that. It kind of like, especially the investment portion kind of loses its flavor if it's demanded versus freely given. But at most, that's what you should want. And if somebody gives that to you and it's not enough, that's your problem, man. You got something wrong that you need to go and fix with Jesus. If you want some blood, renounce of flesh, you just need to check yourself, dude. You're not God, man. Like, there are things you need to heal a relationship. I get that, but that's not it. It's not a relationship of like, you accidentally slammed my finger in the car door, so I get to slam your finger. Like, no, you just have to say you're sorry, and then you'll be careful to make sure you don't do it again. And maybe you give me an ice cream cone or something, and be like, oh, I got you an ice pack, and I made you some soup because I'm sorry for anything. You don't know, I'm sorry, babe. Put your hand in the car door.
Dang.
You do all that, and then I'm going to break your finger like you broke mine. But there are people on an emotional level, they're doing that. You got to check yourself and say, that's not something that Jesus is backing me up on. That's wrong. But you have an absolute right to come up in a situation. And again, you have the right, but sometimes Jesus is still going to say, turn the other cheek. But there will be times when he says, you need to go stand up for yourself. You need to say that's inappropriate. This person needs to be checked a little bit. And you can do that in the same positive attentiveness as in any other place. You can move forward. These are the facts. You say what you need to say, and then you leave it with them. I think it's so important. People will try to stay there and wrestle with the person. It's not your job to wrestle with that person. It's the Holy Spirit's job to wrestle with that person. You need to state your case. You need to draw your boundaries, lay out the consequences, and then you probably need to get out of the way and give God some space to do what he does. Let them have a chance to work it out and come to you and do the right thing. Don't wrestle them and give me the apology. Give it to me. Like, just leave them alone for a second, man. Nobody's able to do that quick. You're not able to do it that quick. So give them some space afterwards, and you'll be surprised how often it gets fixed. There's one complication I want to throw out, because I'm almost going to guarantee it. You guys probably aren't going to do step one. And be like, I can do it while I'm eating breakfast. I can do it in the same room. I'm in a car. I'm not going to pull over at the next place to use the bathroom. I'm fine. Probably not that good at hiding this stuff. And if you don't seek privacy, there's a pretty good chance That person in the car that you're angry with, that person in the room that you're angry with, that you're being passive aggressive with, there's a pretty good chance they're going to ask one of those dumb, short questions. It's a little bit passive aggressive in itself. What's wrong? Are you upset? You seem like you have a little bit of an attitude problem, and you're just going to be, and it's going to blow the whole thing up before you have a chance to fix it. It will. I've seen it happen a bunch of times. I've seen it happen. That's at the dinner party. And like, is there a problem, babe? And you're like, don't tell me. And just give him a second. Give him a second, please. Oh God. I don't know why people do it. I don't understand. I've done it before. I don't know why I did it. It's just like the devil's like, do it. I'll blow everything up. I go, yeah, maybe I will. Stupid.
Yeah.
It's like that little kid energy, like, I'm gonna break this window, and you're like, oh, I broke the window. Why did I do that? And just destructiveness for no good reason. And when we were in Africa once, there was this guy, and he would sit by his house, and he had like a little wooden thing holding up his little lean-to area, and he would sit there with his machete and just and chop it, just little chunks were like, and he just like just little kid destructive energy. And then one day it was like, bam, and it broke, and the whole thing was it's like, this is what's wrong, guys. Just don't needlessly break. But it's an instinct in us, right? So what happens if you don't do the privacy thing? Maybe you can't, and then somebody asks the dumb question. Your instinct is to do one of two things. You're either going to snap at that person because they're not giving you their privacy. That is kind of screwed up. Number two, you're going to lie to them. It's probably what you're going to do. You're going to be like, oh, leave me alone. Why you always have to do this? You're going to snap at them, or you're going to lie. I'm fine. I'm freaking great over here. Can't you tell how happy I am? And then either way, devil just checkmated you. So I want you to do two things. Somebody asks you that question, do not snap at them. Calm your voice down. Shh. Calm it down. Don't lie. You don't have to invite them into your bubble. Unless you've been doing this for an hour, then they're kind of in the right. But if this just happened, you made one little snappy comment and you're just catching yourself and they're on the back of your neck already, you have every right to have some space. Like we said, you have the right to work it out if you can, but you got to do it within a certain amount of time or seek the privacy. If it's taking too long, go to your prayer closet, get away from them. They have a right for you to not be emotional like that all over them, but you have the right to work it out for a second or to bring it up to them. Those are your two rights. They don't really have a right to jump on you the second that something happens and demand that you talk to them about it. We all want to do that. What's wrong? Is it me? Can I get up in your bed? But you don't actually have, like in a polite society, we know you're not allowed to do that. That's up to them if they want to share it. We don't really have a polite society. And so all of our insecurities come out. We think we can corner a person and make them tell us stuff that they don't necessarily have to tell us. Happens all the time. My family's incredibly nosy. Sometimes I'll be sitting with specifically with the women on the side of my family, watching them talk to them, and I'm like, can't ask them that. And the person will like give them a non-answer. They'll go, no, really? No, really? What did he die of? Like, you need to leave this alone.
What?
If it's natural causes, you just need to take that answer and keep walking.
Be specific.
But they dig for detail. But the point is, in that situation,
I'm sitting here suffering. He's just gone twice.
I know. And he's still drinking water. He's spilling it on himself. He's got like a gallon over here. He's got a hamburger jug just. My kidneys. I need it for my kidneys.
Clean it.
Don't flip out. Don't lie to the person. Just excuse yourself. You don't have to answer somebody's questions. Someone can say, is something bothering you? And you can say, you know what? I think I need some air. And you just get up and leave. You know, actually, and you can kind of phrase it like you're answering the question even though you aren't. You go, actually, that's a good point. I think I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then you leave. And what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to take my privacy option right now. I'm going to go and deal with this. That is completely legitimate and it will save you so much trouble. Don't go half-cocked. Don't let the devil instigate a situation where you're not really ready to talk about this and you don't even know what's going on. You haven't peeled the onion, you haven't figured out anything else. You have the right to retreat and figure out what's going on inside of you before you talk about it. You don't have to give up your right to appeal. You don't have to be like, I give up my right to lodge a grievance or have the grievance before I know what it is. I can actually just take a knee and walk away from you and take a breath. And people might not like it, but you have every right to do it. They should get used to that too. Now, what I want to hit on really quick here as we close is just a couple of things looking forward from this sermon into the next week. Like, what does this look like? How do you apply it? How does this start working? And I'm just put it like this. First, I think it's a really great idea to pray about your notes from this sermon, your thoughts on the sermon. Get into your prayer closet. And even if you will, to go through a moment in your mind when you're passive aggressive against somebody. And just recognize how that played out. Like, yeah, that was stupid, ugly, immature, and cowardly. Recognize that, and then go through it in your mind, in your imagination, using the steps that I've talked about. Letting God guide you through it, and maybe Him talking about how it could have been different. You do the same thing with the last time someone was passive aggressive against you. Looking at that, look at the terrible fruit that came out of that. Then rewind it, apply the steps. In your imagination, let God talk to you about what might happen. It helps to internalize. It helps to get the lesson inside of you, to directly plug it into an event in your life, a situation you actually went through. And I think that could be really helpful. You don't have to do it, but it's an option for tomorrow, your prayer closet, whenever you do it, tonight, whenever. The second thing I would really encourage is keep the short list on your phone. Keep it somewhere where, pretty much wherever you're going to be, you could go to the bathroom and go, what the heck did it say to do for step 3? Because it takes a while. Like, once you do it a couple of times, you're going to understand the movement of your heart. It'll be second nature. You won't have to. But the first time you do it, and it's not a good time to try to remember a sermon 3 weeks later while you're feeling passive aggressive. Have it written down at hand. Have a copy in your Bible in your prayer closet. Maybe take a picture of it. Have it on your phone so you can grab it if you need to. Because really what's going to make or break this is the first time you do it. And actually doing it and seeing it work. That's what's going to start setting you free. That's where it's going to click and it's going to become real. It's going to be the hardest time to do it, but it's also going to be the important moment. I want to reassert this. I know I said this. This takes time. You need to make a front-end investment in time to start getting rid of procrastination in your life. It's going to take time in every relationship. You're going to have to push back. You're going to have to do these things. It's going to take time to do the steps. And you're going to be like, I'm going to try to skim them. I'm going to try to go fast and not really peel the onion. I'm not going to really, I'm going to skip a step here. Don't do it. If God wants you to skip something, if you're getting real leading, by all means, follow the Spirit over me. But I'm going to give you these steps and say, if you don't know what to do, and God's not giving you a leading, do this. Try it out, see how it works, but don't take the recipe for brownies I gave you and then screw with it and be like, it doesn't make good brownies. Yeah, try it my way first. Then you can mess with the recipe. But if you don't know what you're doing, follow the recipe. And then you can start to play with things. But I would really, really insist on, you're not going to want to take your time. You really need to. Off that point, this is going to rock some boats. If you haven't figured it out, pushing people out of passive aggressiveness is healthy, but they're not going to like it. They're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. It's going to be messy. But if that relationship has any hope at all, it'll make it better. Sometimes it will bring out an issue to the surface and nobody's willing to move and it breaks something. But the truth was, that's always been true. You just weren't facing it. You were hanging out with an unbeliever and this was here and you're playing this passive aggressive game. You bring it up and like, oh, really? We can't really build on top of this. Though something changes, this is going to be awkward. This is going to be shallow. but at least it's in the open. A lot of times evangelism opportunities are missed because we never let it get awkward. We never let there be a clean line. And that's true on all sorts of levels. I know you might look at it and be like, man, the first time I did this, man, I got in such a huge argument with my wife or whatever. It's like, good, deal with it. Of course you got in a huge argument. You've been storing this up for a decade, man. Get it out. Let the first time the volcano goes off after 1,000 years, it's big, bro. Let it happen. Work it out. Stay close to God. I'm going to tell you something. If you can do this, if you can expose the issues, it's not going to make it worse. It's going to make it, you're going to be more aware of how bad it already is, but it's not going to make it worse. It's going to start making it better immediately. It might feel like it's worse, but if you really look at it on paper, you're really honest about it, it's already making it better. It's already fixing these things. And if you can hold out for just a short while, all of a sudden you're going to see all over your life that atmosphere just lift off. Because there are going to be some people, there'll be people, they didn't get rid of passive aggressive, they just don't do it with you. Because every time they do, it just frustrates the heck out of them because you won't play. So they just stop doing it. They're still doing it with other people, they just stop doing it with you. Awesome. I mean, it would be better if they got free, but I mean, at least you're not under it anymore. Get that stuff out of your life. Get it out of your house. This is one of those things where it will dominate a friendship and kill it over time. It will embitter people. These are things where you raise your kid around it and they go out and they build their household the same way. And it becomes a generational curse. It just hovers over a family for generations. Maybe you're in the middle of that. Maybe you were raised that way and you thought your whole life, my marriage isn't going to be like that. And now it is. And you're like, I don't understand. It's very, very easy. It's because you feel like you have a right when you're offended to do anything that you want. And you just got to start learning that's not true. This is the healthy way to fix a problem. We can talk about it. Most of the time, we let it go. It's not a big deal. We turn the other cheek. We love each other. If it's actually an issue, it's happened a few times, it's setting up a pattern, then I come forward, but I've dealt with it. I'm not bringing emotion. I'm bringing the solution. I'm seeing if you'll meet me there. And that we know how to bury the hatchet, right? These are things, you do them a few times, and instantly you'll be like, why have we been doing it any other way? That was stupid. That was really dumb. This is like so much better. I don't have to waste my whole life. And one thing, you just realize how much drama am I just making for myself? Like, I didn't have to go through half the things I go through. I created most of these fires, and then I complain about putting them out. And it's amazing, a little bit of wisdom sprinkled over the whole thing will fix so much. So I hope this message has been helpful. I'm going to take a second to pray for us. I'm just going to invite a moment of silence here in a minute. I'm not going to put words in your mouth between you and the Lord, but I wanted to give an opportunity for everybody to meet with him right now before we start talking and hanging out. Just to take a second to come before God, to own anything you need to own before him, to amen any conviction he might be pointing out, to make a covenant pledge even right now. If he's calling you to take steps to say, yes, God, I'll do that. Lock yourself in while you're in his presence so you don't talk yourself out of it later, so that you hit the ground running on Monday. Lord, as I open up this, I'll just give it a moment of silent prayer. But Lord, I do pray for us, for strength, for courage, and for success in the battle against passive aggressiveness. God, I come against any spirit that would fight for that in our lives. I say, get the heck out of here in Jesus' name. You have no authority. Be gone. God, I pray for the change of minds and hearts, for the softening of our spirits before your presence, that we surrender to your light, to your truth, to the deep revelation that you whisper in our hearts when we lean into your teaching. God, I pray that you would prepare our minds, that you would shift our affections, that you would move us into a place where we truly handle our relationships with greater wisdom, where we protect the peace that is supposed to rest upon our houses and upon our relationships, that your peace would not be disturbed, that it would rest and find its habitation with us, and that people would taste it, God. They would feel it when they would walk. They would smell it like fresh bread cooking in the oven when they walk by a house where your peace truly rests, and that they would want that, and that they might come to know you by that. Lord, we open up this time of silence. I'm just going to give it a few minutes. We'll probably stop the camera right now, but that's all. Thank you, Lord.